Today I am going to discuss about intracranial pressure and cerebral blood flow. Which one you want to discuss first? Intracranial pressure or cerebral blood flow? You want to discuss intracranial pressure first? Okay. For that I am going to do an experiment. I am going to insert a probe into my brain parenchyma. Tip of that probe containing pressure measuring device. Then I can easily measure the intracranial pressure. I am going to insert probe into brain parenchyma. This is my probe. Tip of that probe containing pressure measuring device. I can easily measure the pressure. Anyone tell what are the layers you have to puncture in order to enter into the brain? From here to brain. Yes, please. Definitely you have to puncture skin here. Definitely you have to puncture skin. Then there is thing called connective tissue layer. Your scalp containing connective tissue layer. Then there is thing called aponeurosis. You have to puncture that aponeurosis as well. Then you have to puncture the loose areolar tissues. Just beneath the aponeurosis, there is thing called loose areolar tissue. You have to puncture that loose areolar tissue. After that, you can enter into periosteum. You have to puncture the periosteum before entering into the skull. Skull means bone. Periosteum. Once you puncture the bone, you can enter into intracranial cavity. So from here to here, the layer is called scalp. If somebody asks, tell me the layer of scalp. Skin is there, connective tissue layer is there, aponeurosis is there, loose areolar tissue is there, periosteum is there. Very easy. Why? I will give a mnemonic. Very easily you can keep in mind. Scalp. The layer is skin, connective tissue layer S, C, aponeurosis A, loose areolar tissue L, periosteum P. I think pathologically easy. Very easy to keep in mind the layers of scalp. You have to puncture the layer of scalp. You have to puncture the skulls. Then you can enter into the brain, subsequently into brain parenchyma. If I enter into your brain parenchyma right now, can you tell me the value of your intracranial pressure? If you have normal intracranial pressure, tell me the value. If I check my intracranial pressure right now, it is roughly somewhere around 5 to 10 millimeter mercury. That means normal intracranial pressure is roughly about 5 to 10 millimeter mercury. Who create this pressure? What are the components of skull? Before that, anyone tell me the volume of skull? How much of volume have your own skull? You didn't measure it? Okay, doesn't matter. In average healthy male, the skull volume is roughly 1370 milliliter. Average healthy male. If I take female, can you guess the volume? How much? It is very similar to adult male, but 170 cc lesser than that. That means 1200 ml capacity is there when considering the female skull. That doesn't mean male are intelligent. Elephant skull containing several liters, but elephant not intelligent than human. Likewise, even though you have little bit high skull volume, it doesn't mean you are intelligent. So this is the volume, this is the pressure. To create pressure within this volume, you should have something in your brain. Your brain containing or skull volume containing your skull volume. Brain matter. What else? Brain matter, cerebrospinal fluid and the blood. Your brain containing brain matter, cerebrospinal fluid and the blood. You are 1300 or 70 or 1200 cubic centimeter occupied by your brain matter, cerebrospinal fluid and blood. Out of 1200, how much belong to brain matter? Yes, please. How much belong to brain matter? Roughly about 80%. 80 to 85%. Cerebrospinal fluid, roughly about 10%. 10% of your brain volume belong to cerebrospinal fluid. Can anyone tell how much of cerebrospinal fluid present in average adult at a time? It is roughly about 150 milliliter. Roughly about 158 milliliter. 120 to 150 milliliter CSF volume. Blood represent approximately 5% of your brain volume or skull volume right now. Brain matter represent 80%. CSF represent 10%. Blood represent 5%. None of them are compressible. If your brain look like a sponge, you can't compress. Definitely you know your CSF can't compress. You withdraw CSF into 5 cc syringe and you close the opening end. Can you compress into 4 cc or 3 cc? Can't. Your CSF can't compress. Can you compress blood like? No. Can you compress brain matter? No. You can't compress none of them. But there can be little bit compensation. When your brain volume increase, little bit of CSF can jump into spinal cord or blood volume can reduce. So it can accommodate little bit. But none of them cannot compress. None of them cannot compress. This phenomena is first discovered by Monro and Kelly. Monro and Kelly says brain matter cannot be compressed. Anyone increase, it will increase intracranial pressure. Otherwise someone has to replace. Brain matter cannot compress, or in none of them present in the brain or skull cannot compress. If anyone increase, other one has to replace, otherwise pressure will increase. Or why? Think, within the brain matter you develop tumor. 5 milliliter size, 5 cc size tumor. In order to maintain the pressure 5 to 10 millimeter mercury, you have to replace 5 milliliter CSF or 5 milliliter blood. Due to some reason, your cerebrospinal fluid drain pathway block, your cerebrospinal fluid start to accumulate. Additional 20 cerebrospinal fluid accumulated. In order to compensate, you have to reduce 20 milliliter blood in your brain, or some brain matter you have to push down from the skull. Your brain start to herniate in that case. So Monro-Kelly state brain matter cannot be compressed. If anyone increase, other one has to replace, other one has to remove, otherwise pressure will increase. So Monro-Kelly doctrine, which says it is as Monro-Kelly doctrine, says brain matter cannot compress. If anyone increase, other one has to remove, otherwise pressure will increase. It is one of the very simplest theory. No need to have 1370 ml brain in order to understand the Monro-Kelly doctrine. Due to some reasons, if anyone increase without other one replacing, what happened? Your intracranial pressure start to goes up. We'll see what happened when your intracranial pressure increase. We'll see what happen when your intracranial pressure increase. For a while, think your CSF brain pathway obstructed. Because of that, CSF going to accumulate within brain. Because of that, your intracranial pressure start to go up. This is your intracranial pressure. Right now, if I check your intracranial pressure without any obstruction, it should be somewhere around 10 millimeter mercury. When I increase the intracranial volume, what happened? Up to 20 millimeter mercury, they shows some degree of compensation. Up to 20 millimeter mercury, they shows some degree of compensation without any harm. Without any harm, but there will be little bit of ischemia into brain in that case. After that, from 20 to 40, from 20 to roughly about 40 millimeter mercury. If your brain pressure from 20 to 40 millimeter mercury, there will be focal ischemia. There will be focal ischemia. From here to here, compensation is there. From here to here, focal ischemia is there. That means part of your brain going to be ischemic. Mainly watershed area of your brain. Those areas start to become ischemic. If your intracranial pressure goes beyond the 40 to 45 millimeter mercury, from here to upward, what happens? Global ischemia start to develop. Whole brain becomes ischemic in that case. Global ischemia. Your intracranial pressure roughly about 10 millimeter mercury. Up to 20 millimeter mercury, you can compensate without any major degree harm. From 20 to 40 millimeter mercury, there will be focal ischemia. More than 40 to 45 millimeter mercury, there will be global ischemia. The reason may be brain tumor or CSF obstruction or higher blood flow. Can you have higher blood flow, abnormally high blood flow in your brain? Yes, there will be condition which have abnormal cerebral blood flow. Now I am going to teach you how your cerebral blood flow regulate. How your cerebral blood flow regulate. Anyone tell the volume of cerebral blood flow? How much of blood going into your brain right now? Yes, please. The cerebral blood flow. Yes, please. Every 100 gram of your brain matter, every 100 gram of your brain matter per minute receive roughly about 50 milliliter of blood. I will repeat it again. Every 100 gram of your brain matter roughly receive 50 milliliter of blood per minute. It means if you have 1 kilogram brain, per minute it receive roughly 500 ml of blood. 500 ml of blood. 500 ml means roughly how much? From cardiac output. Your cardiac output is roughly 5 liter. Out of 5 liter, out of 5000 ml, 500 means roughly 10%. Roughly 15% of cardiac output right now going to your brain. Your brain matter is more than 1 kilogram usually. So, roughly about 15% of your cardiac output right now going to perfuse your brain. If someone asks exact value, 50 milliliter per 100 gram of brain matter per minute receive blood. 50 milliliter of blood receive 100 milligram of brain matter per minute. So, what are the factors which can alter the blood supply to your brain? Before that, I want to ask a question. Out of this 50 ml, majority of blood taken by grey matter. Roughly about 2/3 of blood taken by your grey matter. 1/3 of blood taken by your white matter in the brain. Grey matters are the active part of your brain. when you are thinking. Because of that, you should receive more blood to your grey matter. Grey matter containing cells, white matter containing mainly axons. Not only that, if you think something right now, the thinking area blood supply partially increase. That area blood flow will increase separately. If you do exercise, that area which is responsible for motor movement going to be perfused more. So brain perfusion not uniform. Grey matter receive large amount. When the active part receive large amount, white matter receive lesser amount. So what are the other external factors which can influence your cerebral blood flow? Now I am going to discuss that. What are the other external factors which can affect the cerebral blood flow? When I reduce my blood pressure very low level, I know cerebral perfusion going to be affected. Many books mention that. That means the blood pressure is one of the matter which is responsible for cerebral circulation. If I reduce dangerously low level into blood pressure, cerebral perfusion going to be upset. I will feel some faintishness sometime. I will become unconscious. That means blood pressure, one of the matter which is responsible for cerebral blood flow. Now I am going to check how my cerebral blood flow change with the blood pressure. My cerebral blood flow within change with the blood pressure. This is my cerebral blood flow. This is my blood pressure. Now I am going to change blood pressure or mean arterial pressure. Mean arterial pressure gradually while monitoring the cerebral blood flow. I started with very low value, very close to 0 here. When I increase blood pressure gradually, cerebral blood flow gradually increase. Once it comes into roughly about 50 to 60 millimeter mercury, 50 to 60 millimeter mercury. Even though I increase mean arterial pressure, the cerebral blood flow does not going to change. Even though I increase mean arterial pressure, cerebral blood flow not going to change. Here the value should be 50 milliliter per 100 milligram per 100 gram per minute. Even though I increase mean arterial pressure gradually, it does not going to change cerebral blood flow. But after roughly about 150 to 160 millimeter mercury, when I increase mean arterial pressure, cerebral blood flow gradually increase. That means from here to here, cerebral blood pressure does not going to change with the external blood pressure. This is called autoregulation. Autoregulation means the individual organ ability to maintain their own blood supply. Here, in spite of this much change of mean arterial pressure, brain individual organ capable of maintaining 50 ml per 100 gram per minute blood supply. That is called autoregulation. The definition of autoregulation is the ability of individual organ to maintain their own blood supply. That is called autoregulation. So brain autoregulation is there. Because of brain autoregulation, from here to here mean arterial pressure, from 60 to 160 mean arterial pressure, blood pressure not going to change. This is my autoregulation curve. Now I want to check my grandfather autoregulation curve. Grandfather blood pressure chronically high. When I check his blood pressure, always somewhere around 180 by 100 millimeter mercury. It's too much high, despite antihypertensive. Because of that, if I check my grandfather autoregulation curve, this autoregulation chronically shift into the higher side, chronically shifted into higher side. It is look like this. Once it come into roughly about 100, my grandfather's cerebral blood flow maintaining 50 ml per 100 gram per minute. The autoregulation curve shifted into more towards the right side because of the chronically high blood pressure. If you have chronically elevated blood pressure patient, if you want to maintain cerebral autoregulation, you may have to maintain little bit of higher of mean arterial pressure. Normal, otherwise healthy individual, you have to maintain mean arterial pressure roughly about 60 to 65 millimeter mercury in order to maintain the cerebral perfusion. If you found a patient with chronic hypertension, now came due to some brain pathology, now you want to maintain now you want to maintain cerebral blood flow, then you have to maintain little bit higher mean arterial pressure. It may be somewhere around 100. It is very important to keep in mind. Otherwise, you maintain 50 millimeter mercury or 60 millimeter mercury pressure, cerebral blood flow will be somewhere here. Inadequate cerebral blood flow leading to cerebral ischemia. This is how the blood pressure and the cerebral blood flow change. If I increase carbon dioxide in my blood, when I ventilate my patient, when I paralyze and ventilate in patients, due to pathological accumulation of carbon dioxide, inadequate ventilation, if I increase carbon dioxide level, again cerebral blood flow going to change. What happened when I increase in the carbon dioxide level? Yes, please. What happened when I increase in the carbon dioxide level? What carbon dioxide does? Carbon dioxide itself a vasodilator. It will dilate your cerebral vessels. That means cerebral blood flow going to be increased. If I increase carbon dioxide, cerebral blood flow going to be increased. Now I am going to gradually increase carbon dioxide level while monitoring the cerebral blood flow. For this axis, carbon dioxide. For this axis, cerebral blood flow. Then what I am going to do is, I am going to gradually increase the carbon dioxide. Normal carbon dioxide level how much? In healthy adult, roughly 35 to 40 millimeter mercury. 35 to 40 millimeter mercury. If you want in kilopascal, you have to divide it from 7.5. Here also 7.5. Here 30 mean how many kilopascals? 4 kilopascals. 35 mean roughly about 5.2 kilopascal. 35 mean. If I am wrong, you have to separately calculate that. So this is the partial picture of carbon dioxide right now. 35 to 45 millimeter mercury right now in your blood. What I am going to do is, I am pathologically decrease carbon dioxide. I hyperventilate my patient and pathologically reduce carbon dioxide to very low level. Then I am going to check here 0 carbon dioxide. Then here 5, here 10, here 15 kilopascal. I started with pathologically low level of carbon dioxide here. Pathologically low level of carbon dioxide. With that, what happened is, when I increase the carbon dioxide from pathologically low value to 5 kilopascal, blood flow gradually increase. Blood flow gradually increase. After that, from here to 10 kilopascal, blood flow gradually increase. Blood flow gradually and more or less linearly increase. More or less linearly increase. That means if I increase more than that, more than 5 kilopascals, more than 10 kilopascal, even I increase carbon dioxide, cerebral blood flow not going to change. Cerebral blood flow not going to change. I will repeat it again. What I am going to do is, I am hyperventilating patient and pathologically reduce carbon dioxide level into very low level. Then I measure cerebral blood flow. Then I gradually increase the carbon dioxide while hypoventilation. With the carbon dioxide accumulation, once it comes into 5 kilopascal, from 5 to 10 kilopascal roughly, carbon dioxide and cerebral blood flow shows linear relationship. When I increase 5 to 10, the linearly increase. So that means the blood vessel caliber linearly increased when I increase from 5 to 10 kilopascal. After that, even though I increase carbon dioxide, blood vessel caliber not going to change. It is more or less similar. From here to here, blood vessel caliber gradually increase. So it has very important clinical significance. From here to here, you know your patient's cerebral blood flow drastically increase with increasing carbon dioxide, drastically decrease with reducing carbon dioxide. So if you found a patient with high intracranial pressure, in that case you can hyperventilate and keep somewhere here. So if you found a patient with inadequate cerebral blood flow, you can allow carbon dioxide retainment up to here. More than that carbon dioxide retainment from here to here, that's not going to help. So again I am going to repeat experiment on my grandfather. In addition to hypertension, he having chronic pulmonary obstructive airway disease, respiratory disease as well, chronically carbon dioxide retainer. If I found a chronically carbon dioxide retained patient, the curve will be like this. Again curve going to be shifted into right side because chronically accumulation of carbon dioxide. You can't keep normal carbon dioxide level for this patient. If you keep normal carbon dioxide level, blood flow will be very low. In that case, little bit of high carbon dioxide level you have to allow. This is how your cerebral blood flow changes with carbon dioxide. Now I am going to tell you what happens when you having low level of oxygen in your blood. What happens to your cerebral blood flow when you having very low level of oxygen? So what is normal partial pressure of oxygen in your blood? If I check your blood, if I take your arterial blood right now, if I put into arterial blood gas analyzer, if I check partial pressure of oxygen, it is roughly about 100 millimeter mercury. Partial pressure of oxygen in your arterial blood. Arterial blood partial pressure roughly about 100 millimeter mercury. What I am going to do is, I am going to stop oxygen supply to patient. I am going to kill patient in order to identify the cerebral blood flow. I am going to dramatically reduce the partial pressure of oxygen while monitoring the cerebral blood flow. This is my partial pressure of arterial oxygen. This is cerebral blood flow. You know, all the body tissues except lung, when I reduces the partial pressure of oxygen, the blood vessel going to be dilated. Only in the lung, when we reduces the partial pressure of arterial blood, vessels going to be constricted. That phenomenon is called hypoxic pulmonary vasoconstriction. With the hypoxia, pulmonary vessel going to be constricted. But with the hypoxia, all the other body tissues vessels going to be dilated. It is good thing. With the hypoxia, all the other tissues should receive enough oxygen. In order to that, blood vessel should dilate. With the hypoxia, no point of keeping blood vessels open in the lung. So blood lung vessels going to be constricted. What a wonderful nature creation. So what I am going to do right now is, I am going to check cerebral blood flow while gradually reducing the partial pressure of oxygen. Normally partial pressure of oxygen is 100 millimeter mercury is there. The blood flow with that is roughly about 50 milliliter 100 gram per minute. This is your blood flow. I gradually reduce partial pressure of oxygen once it comes into 60 millimeter mercury. Once it comes into 60 millimeter mercury, my cerebral blood flow drastically increase. My cerebral blood flow drastically increase. Up to come to here, from here to here, no change. Once it comes into 60, it drastically increase. That means from here to here, blood vessel caliber not going to change. But when once it comes into 60 millimeter mercury, that means very low level of partial pressure of oxygen in blood vessel caliber start to increase drastically. That means cerebral blood flow going to be increased. That is how cerebral blood flow regulation with the high blood pressure, with the high carbon dioxide pressure, and with the hypoxia. Thank you very much.